Hi everybody, welcome to this Maya tutorial. Today we're going to have a little bit of a look at two types of animation. We're going to be looking at, they're both constraints. The first one is motion path and the second one is the aim constraint. I'm just going to start off by showing what this is because it's probably the best way to describe it. And then I'm going to let you do the same process with your vehicle that you've made in assignment 1. Okay. So a motion path basically sets a object following a path, and that path being a curve or surface. So I'm going to start by creating a curve for my object to follow. I'm going to do this from above because I just want a nice, it's going to be just on a flat plane. So I'm going to create a curve using my Bezier spline. Okay, so it's a nice curve there. Oops. Press the wrong button, sorry. And all we're going to do here is create an object and then attach it to this spline. So I'm just going to use a very simple poly cube. Okay, good. So I'm going to do this way, so it's got a clear z-axis. We want to take note of where the front of this object is. You can see here we've got the x, y, and z. So I want this to be the front here. So I'm just going to make a little bit of an edit to the front of this, just so we can see that it's where the front of our vehicle is, so that we know that it's following the path the right way. So I'm going to choose edge. This is going to be very simple. So it's just going to have like a little bit of a wedged front. So obviously your object will be significantly better than this. Okay, cool. So now we've got our object and we've got our spline. I'm just going to name these just because it's good form to do so. So I'm going to call this one car, even though we know it's not a car, but it could be. And this one is going to be path. Okay, cool. So make sure, previously we've been working with this drop-down menu set to modeling. Today we're going to set this to animation. I'm going to select my car. I'm going to shift select my spline. And then I'm going to go all the way across to this constraint menu. I'm going to choose motion paths and attach to motion path. So I'm going to click on that. Okay, good. So now you can see, if you look at my timeline that we had last week, I'm going to rewind that, press play, and you can see it follows this motion path. Okie dokie. So what I really want is I want my object to be following on the with the front going forwards. So I'm going to choose my object, and now you'll have a motion path constraint here. So if I click on this, I've got a motion path tab. So click on car, attributator, a motion path, and we have a little thing here called U value, and you notice that it's red. And from previous lessons, you learned that a red value means that that's keyframe. So that's something important to note a little bit later. But I want to roll down here to see, oh, that's not the world up vector. So I see I have the front axis here, and the front axis here is X, and I want that front axis to be Z. That's right. And I can, if I wanted it to go the other way, I just click on inverse front, but I want it to go that way. So now if I press play, that's good. So now my object is following the path. My car is following the path. Okay, good. And if I if for any reason that my car was upside down or something like that, I can just invert that, or I can change my up vector here. So if your car's not working correctly, try this is one, or this is one, just to try and get those, try and get the orientation of your car correct before you move any further. Okie dokie. The important thing here is the animation. So this is automatically given me 2 keyframes, and this is called the U value. So the U value starts at 0 at the start of the animation, and the U value finishes at 100 at 1 at frame 120. So just like last week, I can change that key, I can undo it, I can set it. So if I wanted my animation to finish, let's say on frame 200, so instead of having this blank at the end here, what I can do is go back to my keyframe, click on that, it's playing up a little bit there. Because my keyframe is on there. So when it's a dark red, that means that's the keyframe. So I'm going to right click, and I'm going to break the connection there. So on frame 1, I'm going to set my U value to 0. Right click, set key. Then on frame 200, I'm going to set that to 1, right click and set key. So the U value, as you can see, when I'm right in the middle, the U value, not quite. The U value in the middle is approximately 0.5, and right at the start, the U value is 0. Okay, good. So you'll notice if I play this animation that it starts off slow, speeds up, and then slows down. So this is once again going back to our type of tangent. So if I look in my Windows, General Editors, Animation Editor and Graph Editor, you can see here that my tangent is starting off curved, so it starts speeding off and then slows down. So if I wanted to set those to a constant speed, I could choose tangents and linear, just like we did in lesson 1. So now when I play my animation, it's always at the same speed. Okay, and frame 100 should be pretty close to 0.5. It has to take into account that there's 201 frames in this animation, not 200. Okay, good. Now, the next thing we want to have a look at is a thing called banking. Now, if I click on bank here, let's see what happens to my object as it travels. I'm just going to spin this around a little bit so I can see a little bit clearer. I might put that a little bit higher just to accentuate it. Now, banking just enables the vehicle to tilt as it's turning a corner, just like as if it was had sideways motion on it, centrifugal kind of force that you would in a car or in a motorbike. So with the banking feature, that allows you to your car or vehicle to rotate as it on the around the z-axis while it's turning a corner. So that would be good if your vehicle is, for example, a motorcycle, or if your vehicle is an aeroplane or something like that. So banking is a very good feature for that. But if your vehicle is a car it probably wouldn't tip so far on its side. It might show a little bit of banking, but that's something that's up to you. Next thing we can do is we can sort of make our vehicle drift. So I'm going to use, see this value called up twist. I can set that to 1. Oops, I've messed that up, I think. Yep, okay, I'm having a little bit of trouble here getting this banking. Oh, sorry, I might have to turn banking off. Yep. Oh, this is a degree value. That's where I've gone wrong there. So we can make our vehicle turn as it goes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this up twist at 0. And as it goes around the corner, I'm going to get this sort of to drift sideways. So I'm going to start it here. I'm going to set this as a key. And as it comes around this corner, I'm actually going to change this up twist to say 45. Oops, I've gone the wrong way. That should be negative 45. Set key. So it's sort of twisting around the corner there. And now we want it to sort of steer back the other way. So I'm going to set this to say 45. Oops, let's type that again. Right click, set key. So now as we drive our car, it spins around the corner and then spins around the other corner. Oops, and now we need it to level out as it goes forward. So I believe at about here it should sort of level out. And make sure we set key. And the last one, we can set that at negative, probably a lesser curve this one, so I'll say negative 30. Right click, set key, and at the end it's going to go back to 0. Right click and set key. So now we have used another attribute, the twist value, to have our vehicle spinning around the corners or drifting. And if we wanted to change the speed of our car, we can do so using just the U value. So if I wanted to speed up or slow down, I can put keyframes on the U value. And all of these keyframes we can adjust by using Windows, animation editors, and graph editor, just like we have previously. So I can see the U value here. And we can see, oops, U value twist, U value, which is nice and slow, twist, U value twist. So we can change these twists. And I might set this U value back so it's speeding up and slowing down. So I'm going to set tangents to spline. Oops. Let's set them to auto actually. So that makes them automatic. It's going to accelerate and decelerate much like a car would. Play that one more time. Okay, awesome. Now I want to have a camera in my scene to watch this go by. But I'm just going to add a few extra objects to the scene just to give it a little bit of perspective, so you can actually see what's going on with the camera motion. So I'm going to put this here. I'm going to put some buildings here too. And just so we can see what the camera is going to see. Okay, good. So now I've got a little bit of a street scene. Let's play that. Okay, good. And I'll increase the size of this. I might just change the color of my card just so I've got just so I can see it. You'll probably be best off using your vehicle that you've made in assignment 1. So I'm just going to change this, make this nice and blue so we can see it. And I'm going to move this. Actually, no, it's fine. Okay, so we've got our scene, we've got our car, and we need a camera. So right now I've just got a still camera, just moving, looking at the whole thing. But I think this is a little bit boring. So what I'm going to do is go to rendering tab here. And you can see here where we've made our lights previously, there's also an object called camera. And when we go into our outliner, we can see that we have a new camera called camera 1. I'm going to call this car follow camera. So that we know we're going to have a camera that's going to look at the car and it's going to watch the whole scene. Okay, good. So what I can do is go to panels now, at the top here, panels, and choose perspective. And you can see here I've got my normal perspective camera, but I've also got my new camera called car follow camera, and we can see what is through that camera. And what I want to do now is get this camera to follow the car. So I'm going to do that using a constraint. So I'm going to go back to my perspective view, and I often get this mixed around the wrong way, but I believe I choose my camera and then I shift select the object that I want it to follow. I choose constrain and then I want to choose aim, so it's going to aim, the camera is going to aim at the object, and I can choose this panel here to work out the details, but I'm just going to click on the default settings for now. Oh, I've chosen the wrong one. Always do that. So car first, then camera. Actually, I'm going to undo a couple times there. There we go. All right, so choose car, shift select the camera, constrain, aim, and now my camera was actually not looking at the car, but as the car moves, you can see this camera is tilting. And you can see the camera is actually pointing over here. It's actually pointing the wrong way. And that's because it's got the same problem that we had before with the car, is that it's using the wrong vector. So I'm going to choose this constraint, and now it's got a tab here, car follow camera aim constraint 1. So this is our constraint. Just like we've got a motion path constraint, we now have an aim constraint. Okay, so if you roll down to where it says aim constraint attributes, we can see that we have a thing here called aim vector. And the aim vector is, every time we have these three numbers together, it's always going to be X, Y, Z. And we can see here that I want it actually going along the Z axis, but the Z axis is actually backwards. So I want to put that X as 0. And if I put the Z as 1, you can see it's pointing backwards, which is not what we want. We actually want that as -1. So now the camera is pointing directly at the car. So just to double check that, I'm going to choose panels, perspective, car follow camera shape, and press play and watch my animation. We've got our car driving along, does its twist, moves in close. And this way is an easy way to create an accurate camera follow movement. And you can, but you don't have to do this just with a camera. So for example, if you had a person's face that you wanted to be looking in a certain direction, or eyes are another thing that you can use aim constraints for. So anything that you want to follow an object, an aim constraint is useful for, but it's particularly useful for camera. Cool, that's pretty good. But I'd like my camera to also move, so if I'm going to look in my panels, I'm going to look at perspective. So you can see here that my camera, I want my camera to sort of follow the car left as it moves left to right. So what I'm going to do is move at the start, I'm going to move my camera to the left so it's a little bit closer. I'm going to press S for a keyframe. And then as my car moves along, I'm going to move my camera right to the end here. So, and press, oops, didn't go right to the end, did I? Go right to the end and press S. And now, panels, perspective, car, follow camera shape, and play. Oops. I've overwritten my view constraint, which is a bit of a problem. So let's have a look at that. So if things go wrong, such as what just happened then, let's have a look. Now you can see we have these constraints, but I've also set these keyframes. So I'm going to delete these keyframes because these keyframes have interfered with my rotation. Now it's back to normal. We can see that rotating. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set a keyframe, not for everything, but for the translate. So I'm going to right click here, set key, which is still moving because I haven't interfered with the rotate, which is what the aim constraint is doing. Right click here, set key. Now let's go back to our perspective and follow and press play. All right, that was a pretty good shot. And I might even change that, so that the camera is not following quite as quickly. So I might move back here, move the camera back over here a bit, set key. And I'll also move the camera back over here a bit and set key. That way, when I play my animation, got a little bit less camera movement. That's better. And we sort of start off in front of the car and then we end up behind the car. So it's a bit more of a dynamic scene. And I like to see, I like to get these buildings looking a bit better. So what I might also do is just move my camera down slightly. So I can do that. I'll just do that in my perspective view. Move my camera down slightly. I don't want to move it down too far because then it'll be through the, we don't want it to go through the floor like I just did then. So I'm going to set key. And I'm going to move that down again. Set key. And let's have a look at our animation. Press play. That's better. We're sort of looking up at our buildings now and we've noticed that I've put them off the ground. Whoops. I can fix those buildings up. All right, but I'm pretty happy with that level of movement. I'm going to go back to my, actually I can edit that through here. So I'm going to move this down, whoops. So I can make temporary adjustments here. Oh, come on. These move things can be a little bit of a pain. Oops, it's moving everything instead of what I want it to move. Now, as I move this, my camera just jumps back to where it was because it's got keyframes set. Play again. Cool. And I might actually just have this scene finished with a little bit of a exciting finish. So I'm just going to move out of that. I'm just going to put another building just here. So just as the car comes around, it's going to go out of shot. It's just going to move just out of camera shot, which will be a good transition for my next scene. Let's play that again. Panels, perspective. Cool. So he's doing his little car chase thing. And then there we go. Awesome. Yep. And the more detail I have in this scene, the better that's going to look. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is do this exercise, but see if you can do it with the model that you made in assignment 1. So it's a spaceship or something along those lines, and see if you can get that to work. But make sure before you do that instead of animating a cube, you'll be animating a group. So you'll need to group those objects just like we did in, I believe it was the second tutorial for animation. And if you've forgotten how to do that, edit, group objects, or make the objects as child objects of the parent object. So for example, if I had a second part of this, let's just say that my car is got a battering ram on it. That's a terrible idea, but anyway, whatever. Cool. So now this makes this a much more dangerous prospect. Bit of a unicorn car. Okay, I'm just going to scale that down. Move it into place. And I'll just click on here and I'll change this to object. So that my, oops, it's pretty damn close. Pretty darn close. Okay, so this should be a bit of a dangerous little vehicle. So this isn't going to follow it unless I put that as a child object of the P-Cube 4. Oh, sorry, not P-Cube 4. Silly me. I named it car, didn't I? P-Cube 4 is a building. And this is why we name our objects. So I'm going to call these buildings. Because it just makes it, saves you a lot of time sorting out things that are wrong. And this is the ground. Cool. So now that this child object will just move with the car. Let's play that. Oh, that does look very dangerous. Awesome. Okay, so that concludes this tutorial. In this tutorial, we've looked at the constrain menu. So we have to choose animation and constrain. And we've looked at motion paths, which we attached a object, our car, to a spline. And we've also looked at aim, which gets objects to look at other objects while they move. Okay. That concludes this tutorial. Thank you very much.